Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another update on the Sales Off. We've got some new things to show you guys today, and it's actually been a little while since I've done an update on this project, and the reason why is, well, part one is very close to being completed. There's just a few more shots to do, and there's some post-production stuff, obviously, to work out. But yeah, it's really exciting. And I've debated on how I wanted to show this to you guys because I don't want to spoil it ahead of time. But there's two different sequences today that I wanted to take a look at that I thought were interesting. And then at the end of the video, I had a little nerdy 3D computer graphics discussion for 3D animation nerds like myself. Because, you know, maybe some of you are watching this that are interested in that and are trying to learn 3D software yourself. But let's go ahead and take a look at the first sequence today. This is a conversation between Vincent and Jake after they've left Watterson's office and they're heading back to their cubicles.
You know, you might be able to charm Watterson, but the higher-ups are going to notice how bad you are at this job.
Vince, I gotta let you know, that sting's coming from you. I don't know if I can work under such abusive conditions. I'm sure Mr. Dubs will understand.
Why don't you just do the job? You're here, you're getting paid, and when you slack off, I have to work harder to compensate.
At what cost, Vince?
What?
Do the job. At what cost?
I'm really happy with the shots in this sequence. I think that they look very cinematic. One of the things that we had discussed when developing the shot list was, particularly with the dialogue, how can we keep it interesting? Because, you know, you have your typical shot, reverse shot, back and forth manner of things, and sometimes we wanted to change it up or maybe do a different angle or, you know, a wider shot and just try to keep it interesting. And a lot of that we figured out with the shot list, and there's lots of little moments where I kind of improvise when I'm animating. You know, maybe it was a line that was improvised by the actors, or maybe it's just a certain gesture that I see that could be added there. There's lots of opportunities to just add little details here and there that I think really make a big difference. And again, as I've talked about in a previous video, you see that the characters are animated at 12 frames per second, but their directional movement and the movement of the camera is at 24 frames. And one of the reasons why I went with this look that I didn't mention before was that I noticed in projects like Grimsy, for example, which was at 15 frames per second, anytime I did a big camera move, I was always trying to combat this sort of stuttery look of it, and I really wanted it to be smoother. And so that's one of the reasons why I've decided to do some of these moments where the camera is moving at a much smoother frame rate than the characters. So the next sequence that I want to show you is just a little brief animation loop of what I call the paper sequence. Now this is when Mr. Watterson is explaining this analogy of fishing and the job that Vincent's doing, which is working in a sales office and being sort of a telemarketer of sorts. It has kind of a corporate instructional video kind of feel. You can see here that it looks like this is almost like a stop motion video made out of different paper fragments or like cut up construction paper. And this was also all in Blender, and this was an effect that I'd been experimenting with in the past, and I just wanted to change it up at this part because I felt like we just had this whole conversation with Watterson, and we had, you know, the same camera angles we were doing, and again, as I was talking about before, it was how can we make this interesting and keep it from, you know, getting stale. And so I decided to just completely change up the animation style for this little part and just have this kind of in Watterson's mind as he's explaining this analogy. And the real secret with this to making this look convincing is, first of all, the texture of the paper, really getting some nice paper texture, and the depth of the paper, like it's not just completely flat, there's some depth to it, there's a little bit of a shadow. Getting that right really goes a long way. But you also notice that everything kind of moves and wiggles about a little bit. So every shape has this little random noise modifier on its location and rotation. So it just creates these slight imperfections with each frame that kind of gives you this subconscious feel that like this was photographed, and each time a frame was photographed, like maybe some parts got bumped a little bit, and it really makes a difference. If this was just a static image, it's not as interesting. But as soon as you add a little bit of movement like that, it just gives it this cool style. Alright, so now for a little discussion for all of the computer graphics nerds like me that I've been thinking about recently, and I've never seen a video talking about this. But let's talk about clipping. Now, what is clipping exactly? Well, technically, the definition in computer graphics for clipping has something to do with when parts of an object aren't seen by the camera, they're cut off to save on rendering time. It's something like that. It's a little bit of a complicated technical description, but most people refer to clipping in the context of a collision detection bug. And I think this really comes primarily from video games, which we'll talk about in just a second. Okay, so in real life, when you have two solid objects and they collide, they can't pass through each other. It's just physics, right? But in 3D software, unless you have some kind of collision detection system set up, objects can just clip right through each other. And I think that's part of where we get that clipping term from. Now, this is something to look out for when animating or modeling, and I find myself catching this happening quite a lot. Whether it's a character picking an object up with their hands and their fingers are sinking through the object, or the characters are walking along the ground and their feet are sinking into the ground like it's made of mud or something. You just have to be on the lookout for it. Sometimes you miss it and you don't catch it until later and you've got to go back and fix it. And sometimes you have a really specific case that happens. So say you have two planes that are basically almost in the exact same position. What happens is the two clip through each other in a really weird way that causes them both to flicker on camera. And this is something known as Z fighting. This happens because both of those planes have values in the Z buffer that are nearly identical to each other. So basically the camera can't determine which plane is closer to me than the other one, and so it just kind of does both of them, and you get this weird kind of flicker effect. And a really simple way to fix this problem is just to take one of those planes and just move it ever so slightly forward, and bam, the flickering is all gone. But back to what I was saying about clipping, and specifically in the context of video games, I think that this term probably comes from the no-clip cheats. The Source engine is a great example of that. Games like Half-Life or Gary's Mod, where you can just go into this no-clip mode and just go through all of the solid objects. You can go through the walls and completely leave the skybox if you want. You can just check out the world and explore however you want. But a lot of times you can clip through objects or walls in video games by accident because of a bug in the collision detection system. A great example of this is Super Mario 64. If you do a backwards long jump up the steps at Peach's castle, Mario gains so much velocity that when he collides with the locked door, the game just completely skips the collision detection and he just goes right through the door. And instead of needing to get 70 stars or whatever it was to get through the door, you just go right through it. And this is actually an exploit that is utilized in a ton of speedruns, not just for Mario 64, but for other games as well. So it's a really interesting subject, I think, in terms of computer graphics, because it's a very technical thing. But I think with the advent of video games and speedruns and stuff, it's kind of become more mainstream and normal in a way, where people know what clipping is, and, you know, how many times have you fallen through the floor or a wall in a game and now you're just falling into the void and you just go, oh yeah, it's a glitch, I just clipped through the wall. Like, it's normal. But anyway, enough geeking out about random computer graphic terminology. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I am so excited for you guys to see part 1 and to see the whole completed project. It's really cool when you see all of these shots in sequence. I've just been showing little bits and pieces here and there. But trust me, when you see the story come together, I think it's going to be really cool, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. But you have a great rest of your day, and as always, I will see you in the next video.